Good morning. I love y'all, but I need you to check to see that your phones are silenced. Thanks. I've met you. Once, when our nieces were very young, we asked the middle niece who her favorite person in the Bible was. She said, she was like 3, very verbal, Queen Esther, because she was brave. When I'm scared, I think of her and remember to be brave. Esther is, of course, one of our favorites here. We have shaped entire Bible studies and churchwide gatherings around her. I think of her as one of our feminist icons. She faced persecution and possible genocide of her people, and she loved them, so that she decided to act with tremendous courage. After all, what other option did she have? In this letter to the Corinthians that gives us our theme of do everything in love, the author is quite concerned, not just on the outcomes or actions themselves, or even on the impacts of said actions, but on the motivations. Do everything in love. I want to talk about loving ourselves as courage. Now, I know this is easier said than done. When we speak of Jesus saying, love your neighbor as yourself, we tend to focus on the neighbor portion of it. We must consider who our neighbors are and how we love them. But in all honesty, especially for those of us socialized as women in this society, and probably if we are being very truthful, all of us who are human here, we are actually not that good at loving ourselves. Hear me out. And content warning, I am going to talk about body image for a minute. God knit us together. We are created wonderfully and fearfully, and yet many, if not most of us, walk around with negative tapes going in the back of our heads. We could all keep therapists in business forever. What message did you receive about your body? As a girl, as a teenager, if you gave birth or didn't, what message did you receive about your body and its processes? If you were an older or more seasoned person, what message did you receive about your body as it aged? Did you ever perceive your body as your enemy, as something that had to be controlled, as something that had to be modest in order not to tempt men? Some of the negative messages I learned about my body was that it was too hairy. I'm Semitic, y'all. Comes with the territory. I'm too short. For a while there, I was too flat-chested. Now my boobs are too big. I'm a little too flabby or too fat, or I'm too tiny. It likes sugar too much. It hates dairy too much. My legs and my arms are too short for my torso. My hair was too thick and too coarse, and all of my white hairdressers growing up didn't know what to do with it. I looked better in glasses. I looked better in contacts. If I wore shorts, I was a tease. If I didn't smile when being shouted at by men on the street, I was a horrible person, but that's not the word they used. I learned that I looked too Asian. I learned that I looked too white. I learned that my feet were ugly. Did you have to unlearn some messages about your body to discover the truth? To learn that you are the right size, to learn that you are strong, to learn that you are capable, to learn that body hair or cellulite are not a measure of your humanity or your morality, to learn that hair and skin are racialized, and enforcing beauty standards is both racist and misogynistic, to learn that you are the right shape, to learn that you are the right weight, to learn that you are beautiful. We talk down to ourselves about our bodies. We also have the uncanny ability to be really hard on ourselves about other things simultaneously, like about what we have achieved or not in our lifetimes. We second guess ourselves. We wish we had another degree or more money, or that we had made different choices in life. We think about how awkward that last interaction was with another person. Those interactions come back to haunt us. I've heard some people are not like this. What's that like? The things that people said about our height, our hair, our weight, our bodies, our race, our ethnicity, our gender expression, what and how we eat, all these things live in our head rent-free. We judge ourselves for our emotional reactions, for the times we cry, for the times we get angry, for the times we angry cry. We are hard on ourselves for whatever we, as the confession goes, have done or left undone. The thank you notes we never sent, the friend whose spouse died that we haven't checked in on, the baseboards we didn't dust before our mother-in-law came over, the things we said when we weren't thinking or we were hungry or tired. I'm sure some of you are gloriously free of this level of self-reflection. I aspire. But I know most of us are held captive to the ways in which we were taught not to love or trust ourselves. And when we do not love ourselves well, sometimes that bleeds over to how we treat other people. When we do not love ourselves, we may not always be great at loving our neighbors. This is not just a woman thing. Think about all the boys with their tender feelings who were told that those were not acceptable. How many men we know who don't cry when crying is pretty natural? It stands to reason how many of them are actually sad, not so deep down, or don't have friends that they share feelings with, over-relying on the women they marry, if they are straight, to handle all those feelings alone. I believe that this level of self-criticism and the ways in which we are quite bad at loving ourselves require courage to consider. Loving ourselves is countercultural. If we loved ourselves, what impact would that have on the economy? I'm serious. Skincare and makeup industries, what would that do to the dieting and supplements marketplace? We could make the economy crash. How much would that shift consumer goods and products in general when we know that we are enough just as we are? Black lesbian poet activist Audre Lorde once said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." She was not talking about me, of course. She was speaking specifically about herself as a Black woman, a lesbian, a poet, an activist in the face of a society that was working against her and against her compatriots. And while most of us are not part of that group, I think we can learn a bit from her wise words. I am generally a joyful person. Life is short. But I'm also pretty realistic. After living in this body, in this society, I know that I, as a biracial, queer, Asian American of Japanese and Jewish descent, an ordained woman, I fall into several categories that are regularly dehumanized in our society. I've been harassed online for being a woman pastor by those who don't believe in women's ordination. My favorite response came from a woman pastor who was like, "But I exist, so," yeah. My parents' marriage and my identity were at one time criminalized. My sexual orientation was at one point criminalized, and it only became legal for me and my partner to marry just over a decade ago. We have white supremacists marching into my Nashville, Tennessee Metro Council meetings, shouting anti-Semitic slogans and wearing swastikas. Once upon a time, it was illegal for Japanese people to be citizens or own property or be out after dark or exist on the West Coast outside of a concentration camp. We live in a country run by a political establishment in which one entire political party has a platform committed to my annihilation, and a political establishment comfortable with the occasional or regular exclusion at best and extermination at worst of those who must be sacrificed on the altar of a growing stock market, enriched defense contractors, for-profit detention centers, and global political and economic stability. We live in an economy of death, not of life. In the most broad sense, there are people out there who want me dead, or at least quiet, my God woman, which seems like an affront to the living Creator who made me who I am. So while I do not share the same context that Audre Lorde comes from, I have a glimmer of understanding. Caring for myself is not just scheduling a massage or a manicure. I am not denigrating those things. It is making sure that I understand that I am created in God's image, that I am loved, that I deserve to be a human who is alive and free to live, that I live in a society that makes space for me to flourish. This, as you know, is not a given for all people. We know that there are those who wish that immigrants did not exist, who do not believe Black Lives Matter, who are comfortable with genocide, who believe transgender people are a perversion instead of just people trying to live. I have lived for several years in states where it is quite obvious that the state legislature and many of the surrounding churches would be okay if we just disappeared. They are not showing me or those I care about love. It is not love to refuse federal dollars to help feed children. It is not love to prevent pregnant people from obtaining necessary medical care. It is not love to tell kids and their parents that they are not allowed to access gender-affirming care. It is not love to allow domestic violence offenders ongoing access to firearms. So daring to live out loud, take up space, exist in their faces, love ourselves when they wish us ill, this is revolutionary. You do not have to be me to understand this. In this late-stage capitalist patriarchal society in which women are supposed to want to have it all, where we should want the education, the career, the husband, the kids, the house, the perfectly sized body, the great workout, and still have time for wine with girlfriends, we as women are fed a great deal of toxicity, in which the solution is to work harder on ourselves, spend more time hovering over our children's existence than any other time in history, medicate our anxiety and stress with exercise, disordered eating, and alcohol, and do our best to make sure we don't have wrinkles, body hair, or too much fat in the wrong places. 2024, and we are still dealing with this. It feels so dumb. To love ourselves, we should demand better. Feminist lesbian theologian Carter Hayward once wrote, "Love is a choice, not simply or necessarily a rational choice, but rather a willingness to be present to others without pretense or guile. Love is a conversion to humanity, a willingness to participate with others in the healing of a broken world and broken lives. Love is a choice to experience life as a member of the human family, a partner in the dance of life rather than as an alien in the world or as a deity above the world, aloof and apart from human flesh. We can choose to react to these threats on our lives, to ourselves, with fear. We could double down on security measures. We might decide to narrow our circles or begin to screen out others. Or we can make a choice to love and to do everything in love. We can begin here, inside ourselves. We can begin to replace destructive tapes of self-hate, judgment, the narrative that we are only worth what we produce, or we are only worth what we sacrifice on behalf of others. We deserve a self who is beloved for her own sake. I should be clear, in a world that blames women for things, it is not that we are the only problem. We can choose to demand that we be loved from the outside. In fact, we deserve love. We deserve to be safe and valued. We deserve a community, a country, a world that bends toward love in concrete ways. Loving ourselves means loving all of this. Our bodies have a race, they have a gender, they have a nationality, they have a gender presentation, they have a sexual orientation. Our bodies need health care. They need a clean environment. They need healthy food and safe outdoor spaces. They need community. They need a home free of abuse and violence. These bodies sometimes produce other humans who require education, childcare, safe neighborhoods, safe schools, free of bullying and gun violence and bomb threats and evacuations and hate crimes. God is a God of life, not profit, not greed, not death. God is a God who creates. God made every single bit of creation on purpose, no mistakes. Do you know how entire families thrive on a global scale? You're PW, so you do. When women are educated and able to do whatever it is they're called to do, whether that's work or parent or provide care for elders or all of the above, and especially when women are not forced to make a choice between work and family. We do best when we have affordable and equitable health care, not just the health care the state legislature and for-profit insurance companies believe we should have, but the health care we know we deserve. A functional immigration system that allows people to move, just compensation or equal pay for equal work, affordable housing, access to quality, affordable childcare, access to quality, affordable, fresh food, because we are often the one who makes sure everyone eats, and a thriving ecosystem free of extreme weather induced by human and industrial activity. When we are able to wake up in the morning and do what we are meant to do, and our families, neighborhoods, states, and country support us in getting that done, we will feel loved and supported. When the theology taught in our churches proves to us over and over again that we are loved, created in the image of God, we will be free to love ourselves. After all, loving ourselves should not always have to be a revolutionary and defiant act. Loving ourselves should just be. Loving ourselves well will spill over and have the consequence of making life better for others, too. This probably feels political. Politics, I will remind you, is simply our shared agreements about how we live together. Politics is not partisanship. I understand that now in the United States, our current arrangements and agreements have become deeply dysfunctional, and these issues of dealing with our actual bodies have become partisan political issues. I didn't make the rules. Those of us living in the rules, we can decide that we choose to love ourselves, demand that the world love us back, and insist upon loving all creation, because all God's creation deserves our love, from the monarch butterfly to the child at the border to the young mother halfway across the world just trying to find enough for a child to survive the night. Love also means bridging divides we don't care to cross. Theologian Carter Hayward wrote, "Love, like truth and beauty, is concrete. Love is not fundamentally a sweet feeling, not at heart a matter of sentiment, attachment, or being drawn toward. Love is active, effective, a matter of making reciprocal and mutually beneficial relation with one's friends and enemies." Which brings me back to loving ourselves. Love asks something of us. Love is not just a nice feeling. Love can be a challenge. We have all loved someone who was just a lot, or maybe too much. We have all drawn boundaries around our love, and some of that is okay. I always say even terrible people deserve friends and jobs, even if I am not that friend or that hiring manager. We all have limits. But when our love boundaries are drawn by categories, by a narrow heart and a narrow morality, we impose those boundaries upon others by law or theology, we have a problem. Let me use an example. When I hear the word loving, I also think of the 1967 Supreme Court decision, Loving versus Virginia, which eliminated anti-miscegenation laws that prohibited marriage between white people and non-white people. This case specifically was about a biracial couple, Richard Loving, who was white, and Mildred Loving, who was black. They had been sentenced to prison in Virginia for violating the anti-miscegenation law. They took the state to court and appealed to the Supreme Court, which overturned that law unanimously based upon the 14th Amendment. These laws in the South, where I live, were primarily about marriage and black people. These laws where I am from and where I am returning to were also used to forbid marriage between white and Asian people, Native Americans and African Americans, black people and Filipino, white people and people of Mexican descent. You get the idea? In most of the country, these laws were actually repealed before the Supreme Court case was decided, and there are some states that never had these laws, but the entire Southeast didn't eliminate anti-miscegenation laws until after the Loving decision, and some took their real sweet time, as late as 2000. This is what I mean about drawing a boundary based upon a narrow heart. We are not individually required to love others, but if we refuse to love others and we impose our restrictions on love on other people, that's where we have committed a sin. I have never understood why some people decide they are not gay or lesbian, bisexual. That's great. Some of my best friends are straight. And you know who you are. And because they are not gay or bisexual, and they believe being gay or lesbian or bisexual is wrong, they insist that everyone must abide by their rules. Babe, some of y'all wear your outside shoes inside the house. Maybe your rules work for you, but they do not work for me. Just because I know I am the same gender that I was assigned at birth does not mean that everyone feels the exact same way. Those who draw narrow boundaries have an uncanny ability to insist that everyone else follow their same narrowness of heart. But if you have ever loved someone who is different from yourself, even someone whose appearance causes you to pause and think about it, you would know that the human capacity for love is remarkable. Just like aerobic exercise causes the heart to be able to pump more blood more efficiently, loving more only makes you better at loving. Love is a matter of self-preservation, and it is also an exercise. Practicing love helps us love more. What if we fought for people to be themselves instead of fighting for them to be like us? What if we loved ourselves enough to understand that we do not have to see our own suffering in every other person? In the queer community, we have a bit of a joke that isn't really a joke. When there is a lawmaker or a pastor or any prominent figure who is especially homophobic, one of us will at some point text our petty friend and say, "Oh, he's gay. He's a self-hating homosexual." Remember, a champion for exclusive marriage rights was once arrested for soliciting sex in a men's restroom at an airport. Sometimes an especially vitriolic homophobe makes me think, "Oh, he's mad." Sorry, it's usually he. Because someone told him he couldn't be that way. And now he sees all these other people happy, walking around being the way he was prevented from being. It's sort of funny, except it is awfully sad, and it is dangerous. Despising a part of yourself, it is not courage, it is cowardice. It is a failure to stand up for yourself, and it is a denial of the very you that God created. And I understand that sometimes self-hatred is a coping mechanism, the way you survive the betrayal of someone else, maybe a parent, persecuting you instead of standing up for you the way they should have. But just because you survived doesn't mean you must be loyal to it. And if your inability to love part or all of yourself guides you to create an atmosphere of hate or exclusion of others who reflect the thing you fear back at you, then you have sinned against God and against neighbor, beginning with sinning against yourself. How dare you take something, someone God made, and treat them like trash? God worked hard on you and on your neighbor. I think the story of Queen Esther is a story about someone who loved her people, yes, but it is also a story of someone who loved herself. She loved herself, and she was loved, and that love spilled over into her ability to push through fear of annihilation and act out of love for her people. Imagine if we all had the courage to love ourselves enough that we decided to tell the rest of society that they must love us too. Not just giving us flowers and chocolates once a year, first of all, it should be more frequent, but that all of us must love us enough to provide us with safe drinking water, equal pay for equal work, social support for us and our loved ones when one of us gets sick or is very old or is very young, the ability to go about our day without getting gunned down, the freedom to take public transportation without dying in a hate crime. What if women voted for a better world for all women? And not just once every 4 years, but every single election. What if we all loved ourselves and then loved one another, enough to make sure each one of us could live as we believe ourselves to be most happy? What if we fought so others didn't have to be like us to thrive? What if love was the reason we did anything and everything? God created us, gave us what we need. God gave us bodies that are good in all their iterations. God gave us love and sparkles and made us just enough ourselves. In thanks and gratitude to God, may we be fierce, tenacious, courageous. God sent God's child to save the world, and our thanksgiving for that gift is to continue the work of making the world inch ever closer to the beloved community. So love yourself, love your neighbor, love the stranger, love the creation. God created all of it, all the cosmos, and who are we to do anything but praise God for that? We have everything we need to make it so. Amen.